Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances on the Srila Prabhupada and worship and Gauranga. I have no qualification to speak on the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Whatever I would speak is the mercy of Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and previous acharyas. I seek blessings of all the Vaishnavas, their Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Lord, deeply to my God, Chandra, so that I can speak something which is beneficial to everyone and bring in some purification within me. So, correct to start the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Virayet Nastaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistukim Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 7, title Further Inquiries by Vidura, text 16. Okay. Sadve tatyahritam vidwan atma mayayanam hare abhatyapatam nirmulam vishwamulam na yadbahihi sadve tadyahritam vidwan natma mayayanam hare abhatyapatam nirmulam vishwamulam na yadbahihi. Synonyms: sadhu, as good as it should be. Etat, all the explanations. Vyahritam, thus spoken. Vidwan, O learned one. Na, not. Atma, the self. Maya, energy. Ayanam, movement. Hare, of the personality of Godhead. Abhati, appears. Apartham, without meaning. Nirmulam, without basis. Vishwamulam, the origin is the supreme. Na, not. Yat, which. Bahihi, outside. Translation: O learned sage, your explanations are very good, as they should be. Disturbances to the conditioned soul have no other basis than the movement of the external energy of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace. Avachanand Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A living entity's unlawful desire to become one with the Lord in every respect is the root cause of the entire material manifestation. For otherwise, the Lord has no need to create such a manifestation, even for his pastimes. The conditioned soul, under the spell of the external energy of the Lord, falsely suffers many unfortunate incidents in material life. The Lord is the predominator of the external energy, Maya, whereas the living entity, no, sorry. The Lord is the predominator of the external energy, Maya, whereas the living entity is predominated by the same Maya under the material condition. The false attempt of the living entity to occupy the predominating post of the Lord is the cause of his material bondage. And the conditioned soul's attempt to become one with the Lord is the last snare of Maya. So, just to bring in context from the previous thing until now, what happened, like, so Vidura meets Uddhava and then they have the conversation, and finally Uddhava suggests Vidura to go and meet Maitreya Rishi, and Vidura meet Maitreya Muni on the banks of Ganges, river Ganges. And after hearing, I think for the last 2 chapters or so, I think the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya Muni are going on, and having heard from the Maitreya Muni that this universe is created by the glance of Lord on the material nature, which consists of those 3 modes. And now, in this chapter, Vidura wanted to know more about Ishvara and Jiva, and how it Jiva can be liberated, the things. So the first question, like he wanted to know, we learned like Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is like spiritual. I think in that verse it's used as Chinmakrasya and transcendental Nirgunasya. So there are no modes, is under no mode, control of no modes. And he want to know how he is connected with the material modes. And the next question is how the Lord, who is unchangeable, Avikarinaha, performs action that indicates change. I think this is on the second verse, I think. And on the third verse, he wanted to know why Lord is creating this universe, like creation, maintain, and destroying the universes by his Maya Sakti. What is the reason? Like we can understand, like children when they play, like they can building with the blocks or something. They'll have some time and then they'll break it and then they'll try to create something else and all things. But their children are doing it impelled by the desire. But why Lord is self-satisfied, who is doing that same thing with the creation of universe? The next set of verses talks about why, or about Jiva actually. How does a pure soul becomes engaged in science? And the next question is, why does the living entity suffers in spite of the Lord's presence in the heart? So after those questions, then Vidra says that he's kind of bewildered or something, and then answer the things. And then Maitreya Muni start answering those questions from the text 8 to 14. And there in the first thing, like where Maitreya Muni answers, basically he did not answer the question about the Lord, but he said the knowledgeable people, whatever they talk about the Lord, is all illogical. Basically, they say that the Lord has overcome the illusion, but at the same time, they say the Lord is unconditioned. Like how these two statements never go together. That's what Maitreya Muni refutes by saying that it's all against all the logic. And then in the next verses, like I think text 10 to 11 is answering the questions about answering the questions about the jiva. So the first thing is that like distress of the living entity is due to the misidentification alone as similar to one dreams about one's head is cut off, but there is no factual data. So and I think the second one is he gives the analogy of the moon's reflection in the water appears to be tremble because the water is water waves and all, but in reality, the moon is not really trembling. Similarly, the soul or self who's associated with the matter appears to think that he's matter, but he is separate. So, and next 12 to 14, that's where he is giving the bhakti or devotion service is the way one can be get out of this misunderstanding. So I think in the first verse he says like by bhakti vanquishes the misconception, and then by performing the services vanquishes the miseries, and then says hearing and chanting the Lord's names vanquishes all material miseries. Like basically hearing and chanting is the sadhana bhakti. And then he what to speak about those who attain attraction for serving the Lord, lotus feet, which is who are in the bhava bhakti. And the next section, which is starting from 15 to 22, where actually after hearing the answers from Maitreya Muni, Vidra started sharing his realizations or appreciation towards the Maitreya Muni for answering those questions. And in the 15th verse, Maitreya Muni, Vidra tells Maitreya Muni that all his doubts are cleared. And he gives an example like have been cut off by the weapon of your convincing words. So, and now coming to in this verse, basically he started saying, who learned say your explanations are very good as they should be. So, and then he's saying that disturbances to the conditioned soul have no other basis than the movement of the external energy of the Lord. So basically all the conditioned living beings in this world are all controlled by the external energy of the Lord. And okay. So on this context, like I was listening one of the Guru Maharaj lectures about the material world, and Maharaj was talking about the situation of the baby or the jiva when they're in the womb of the mother, and then he was relating that to Sukadeva Goswami's birth. So in the Canto 3, I think the further chapters of the same canto what we are reading now, on the chapter 31, Kapil Dev explains the whole movement of how the jiva comes into the womb of the mother and all that whole process of birth. And during that whole process. So we all would have heard like what conditions it would be in the womb, like so crammed up small space and then keep growing and then living with all other uh, living entities like small worms or bugs and all those things, and staying in the water, not enough things. In that condition, like if a soul or the self, the living entity, understands, like at least if they have some understanding, like a maybe Brahman relation or a devotee. So in the further in the chapter, like text 19 to 21, where actually I did not. So the living entity prays to the Lord, saying that please keep me in this place. I don't want to get out of the womb and so here, like 19. The living entity in another type of body sees only by instinct. He knows only the agreeable and disagreeable sense perceptions of the particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses.
Yeah, nice.
I can control my senses and can understand my destination. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed within this body, and by whose grace I can see him within and without. The next verse. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Devamaya, at once captures the newly born child and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death begins. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of innocence with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated births and death. So, a, a reader's soul understands and prays to the Lord, saying that, please just keep me here and let me get my dung. Yes, I don't want to get into the material world. So the Maharaj was connecting that to Sukadeva Goswami. That's the same reason, like Sukadeva Goswami, who's a fully realized and liberated soul, and he doesn't have any attachments, and he just want to stay in the mother's womb and then just leave from there. He don't want to get into the material world. But Vasudeva convinces him by glorifying the Supreme Lord, and that's where, like, I think Deva Goswami understands, okay, there is a better thing than the liberation, and that's where he takes birth, and then he listens the Bhagavatam from Vyasadeva, and also the same thing he explains that to Parikshit Maharaj at the later stage. So a devotee who understands the nature of this world is okay to accept the pains very happily, or he is indifferent to the pains, but they try to avoid the pleasures of this world, as they know that they are binding binding to them. So that's why, like, a lot of the sannyasis are realized souls, are all those people who do the yoga, and also they try to be away from um, all the material pleasures. So that's where they go to the Himalayas or anywhere. So they live in caves and all those things. So even in our case, like so many of our Maharajas who live with us, and then they might be accepting our things like whatever we are offering, like nice prasadam or nice place to stay for them. But uh, they are accepting all those things to just give us the pleasure, but they are never attached or attracted by those pleasures. They know that they are all temporary and they are not going to let them get away from this cycle of birth and death. So, and in that same context, I was just wondering about the pleasures, and I just thought of like anesthesia, the painkillers, when what we take between to bear the pains, right? So the pleasure is like coming uh, in between the pains, and that gives like some kind of relief from the pain whatever we had before. But when that pleasure is going off, and that pain will come back again. So similarly, I think even in the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained all the pleasures and pains are like seasons; they'll come and go. So similarly, so a intelligent person who might understand, okay, I'm taking this medication and it's a temporary relief, and I would like to find a permanent solution and get out of this pain. And same way, a soul who understands that the pleasures are like temporary, and but they are binding, as the medicine is kind of addictive sometimes. Similarly, they think that the pleasures are binding, and they try to uh, get away from the pleasures or try to detach themselves from the pleasures. And the other thing I was wondering about the material world was like yesterday my son got a remote control car and he was playing with the car, and it was a nice analogy to think like basically the car is moving the way he controls the remote. So if I look at it, so I'm also kind of that car, but the remote is under control of the material energy. I might think that I'm doing all the things the way I wanted, um, but it's all been controlled by the modes. So, so that like as actually it's mentioned, like so means when we are in the material world, like we have to either way, like whatever ashram you take or like whatever we do, so there is no way of getting away or getting free from the world. Only thing we need to make a choice is that uh, the goal of the life means get involved with the devotional service and get free from the misidentification of me and mine. All these are for my enjoyment. And when we can get attached to Krishna, so then we can be freed from this cycle of birth and death. So, and the same thing, like even when Parikshit Maharaj asks Sukadeva Goswami, he, so what is to be done for a person who is about to die? And in the second chapter, I think the same thing Sukadeva Goswami also answers like this. So those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. So, O descendant of King Bharata, one who desires to free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. And the highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty. He is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. O King Parikshit, mainly the topmost transcendentalists who are above the regulative principles and restrictions, take pleasure in describing the glories of the Lord. And just to conclude, as Prabhupada mentioned in the last sentence of the third quote, the false attempt of the living entity to occupy the predominating force of the Lord is the cause of his material bondage, and the conditioned soul's attempt to become one with the Lord is the last snare of Maya. So basically, the jnanis are Mayavadis, like who wanted to merge into the Brahman realization. So they think that they reached the highest stage, but that's where Maya put their trap to bring them back into the material world. So with that, I conclude, and please forgive me if I spoke anything which is not meaningful, or with my limited knowledge something wrong. Please forgive me and correct me, and share your thoughts or relations. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. It's very pleasing when you're reading all the purports and the translation and your realization. The one thing I was contemplating, especially on this translation, that Maitreya Rishi, after telling all this, Vidura, this is this realization, right? As you're revising the entire chapter. So his questions and then the answers, and his realization is that this is the basis. All the disturbances created in our lives are the basis. The basis is the material energy.
Yes.
And you are talking about how Maharaj, even when we provide so many things for his own comfort, they are completely detached and they don't get attached to this. That means they have realized the same truth. What Vidura was talking, I was thinking through that. And even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says that one should be, when Arjuna was unable to fight, or we know all what happens, Krishna says that one should be, we are all under the material modes, different modes, and one should act according to their nature. And the analogy of the lotus flower on this muddy pools. So one should be like that, which even though everything is acting, but we should be completely detached out of those material modes and act according to your nature and dovetail our activities to devotional service, as you said. It's such a nice topic today. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I joined late, but a very, very nice class, Prabhu. And thank you for bringing up the Kapil Dev section, I mean, full of resolve, the living entity in the womb itself. My clear consciousness, with the help of my clear consciousness, I shall deliver myself, not enter into the wombs of many more mothers. And that was, those prayers are so nice. And of course, this last Sunday we had Avanti Brahmana's prayers, and his resolve also same way. I shall, by the strength of devotional service, I shall cross this ocean of nescience. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, sharing and connecting all these points. I was liking about the initial summary that you gave, all the questions what Vidra was asking. So,
Yeah, it was all from Gaurang Darshan Prabhu's Bhagavad Gita Prabhu. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for no one else have any sharings or anything. We can close on 8:03. One shakal patarupyascha vipasana devata patitanam bhavebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Krishna conscious day. Okay? Thank you. And meet you all tomorrow.